Reports say the Big Ten is looking at other schools to add, and not all the names on the list are the ones that we have expected.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You're tuned into Locked On Big Ten. Everything you need to know about the conference every day of the week. Matt Sheehan's in to talk about everything going on in the conference since the last time we talked yesterday. Nate Dickinson with you as well. Matt, Big Ten Media Days wrap up on Wednesday. A couple of days to hearing from all the coaches and Kevin Warren as well. Players there too. Your biggest takeaways from the days of talks over in Indy?
That, you know what, maybe playing it boring as a coach is the way to go. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and debate the topics that Jim Harbaugh wants to openly speak about, but wow, you grab some headlines choosing the things that you talk about. So yes, as I sit here and a lot of fans of their schools sit there and just watch their coach go through a bunch of coach speak, and it's like, this is kind of boring. What's the point of all this? Maybe just playing it a little boring and doing a lot of coach speak is the way to handle these Big Ten media days. But of course, there's some good stuff to pick and prod out in these sessions. Of course, some from my guy Mel Tucker. Brett Bielema actually had a really good point in a hot second. But do you have anything that you want to get to, or do you just want me to keep rolling and talk about good old Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini?
No, you can roll. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. My biggest takeaway was just how I think Kevin Warren's really kind of going to go on the attack here and be really he said, I thought, a lot compared to what he's done previously here. And just what we usually get out of these media days. He came in with an agenda, I thought.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's just the way you got to go, as if, if you weren't convinced that he was in attack mode as a Big Ten commissioner, kind of double and triple down on that in the last few days, no doubt about that. But if stop me if this is what you talked about yesterday when it comes to Brett Bielema, though. But it was interesting to see him, or I guess see him. Yeah, that's nice. Rather hear him, Nate, talk about what a benefit week 0 is to some teams. He says, quote, I got it in front of me. You see huge amount of improvement from players who have never played the game from week 1 to week 2. So there you go. They got that week 0 game. They are playing Wyoming. Pretty good matchup there. But the next week, they are playing the Indiana football Hoosiers. So if this is an instance where, you do see a big leap of improvement from week 0 to week 1, maybe that's a surprise to Indiana, another team that's, kind of in the balances of, all right, are we going to be okay this year? Are we not going to be okay? So I don't know. I think that's a nice little undercard storyline. So yeah, is it the sexiest quote in the world? No, not really, but I think it's a pretty good point. So yeah, bet when you asked me, hey, what was your biggest takeaway? You didn't think I'd start talking Illinois football right off the bat here, did you, Nate? But hey, here we are, and same also applies for Nebraska, Northwestern, and if I'm missing any other schools that are playing in week 0 in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. What did you hear? I mean, you mentioned Mel Tucker for a second there. You're our Spartans guy. What did you take away from what he and the Michigan State representatives had to say?
Yeah, our big storyline of the offseason, well, there's a few, but one of the top 3 biggest ones is we're replacing a guy named Kenneth Walker, who was a pretty good running back for Michigan State. And how do you replace it? Well, the guys behind him last year left a lot to be desired. However, we got 2 guys out of the transfer portal. One of them is a Wisconsin transfer in Jalen Berger. Another guy's a Colorado transfer in Jarek Broussard. He talked about both those guys, and in both the quotes, obviously he's talking high about these guys. He's not going to go on a microphone and say, they should be okay. I don't know. One guy kind of gets tackled. No, of course he speaks highly about them. But in those quotes, he talked about how they're good pass catchers out of the backfield. Last year, Kenneth Walker did everything but catch the ball out of the backfield. He only had 13 receptions out of the backfield last year, and that's pretty low for running back, especially running back that played as much as he did. So is this another wrinkle for Michigan State's offense going forward this year? Will you be able to duplicate what you got out of Kenneth Walker? Absolutely not, but maybe you can alleviate some of that with screens out of the backfield, wheel routes out of the backfield, just a dynamic pass catcher out of the backfield, and Michigan State looks like they have 2 of them via the transfer portal. So that was my biggest takeaway from the Mel Tucker point of view. Of course, someone tried to have him take the bait on Pat Narduzzi's comments. I don't know if you've hit on those at all, but yes, Pat Narduzzi, he said, well, we almost beat Michigan State. We probably would have if we had our starting quarterback, which is all fine and well, but the reality is that you didn't. And then he doubled down on it, saying, well, since we almost beat Michigan State, who was one of the best teams in the Big Ten, we can go to the Big Ten and beat every single team there. Okay, Pat, all right. So that was offered up to Mel Tucker, and he didn't take the bait on it. He was like, not going to play around with that. We won. I'm not going to do the hypotheticals when we actually won the game. So So someone tried to get him on it, but he was boring, which, hey, boring, like I said, plays at media days. So there we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of that, but, you try and pick out whatever it is that does come out. We probably overthink it, but that's part of the job.
Of course we do. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, it's also too, like, I'm just, going through all the quotes too. And another big quote was from Ryan Day. And I've joked about this on my podcast. I've joked about it on here, but like, have you ever seen a team more miserable to go 11-2 and win the Rose Bowl than Ohio State last year? Like that I've never seen a team more upset to accomplish everything they did last year. But really, like during the trophy ceremony in Pasadena, you would have thought they just won like the Pinstripe Bowl or the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Like, no, they won this great bowl game, but they're upset. And I think it's kind of the mindset too that I look at and say, holy crap, not only do they have the talent to blow by everyone this year, but like I think they're going to have that like revenge tour, F everyone mindset going into this year. And Ryan Day said as much yesterday. He said, quote, his players are a little scarred and a little calloused from last year. Listen, if you can say that about a team that just went 11-2 and won the Rose Bowl, you're doing a pretty good job at where you're at if your team is scarred by such a horrific season. So I think it's going to be the Buckeye death machine will be rolling this year, and that's just further evidence that I'm scared, Nate. I'm scared.
I don't think too many people are too worried about how scarred Ohio State is. They're plenty.
No, of course
good
not.
Enough.
Right. No, it's just that mindset though. Like they're talented, but they're also angry and talented, which, oh boy, I just hope that we keep within 40 this year. That's all. Anyway, enough about our problems. Enough about my problems.
We'll get them out. You'll probably end up in the same pot or whatever it is ends up with Ohio State whenever the divisions come out anyway. But we'll see what ends up happening in those last few years. That's a conversation for another day. We're going to talk about some reported news coming out of the Action Network about Big Ten teams, potentially the Big Ten adding potentially more teams and schools. Reportedly 7 other schools that the conference is looking into from a source speaking to the Action Network. We'll get to that with Matt here. But first, BetOnline is the place to go for all your sports gambling needs. It's baseball season, Matt. I know football and basketball is what we do a lot here on the Big Ten podcast. But if you're someone who wants to learn more about betting on baseball, like strikeout props, Nerfies are popular nowadays, stuff like that, BetOnline is the place to go to not only get all the education in sports news, but sports gambling news in particular, things like that. Yeah. If you're someone who's experienced, you know how valuable it is. If you're someone who's still learning, it's a great tool that can help you out with doing that, learning everything you need to know so you make sure your money's going in the right spots. And of course, as always, if you hear a line on the show, when we talk about stuff like that and you want to bet along with us, all the lines are coming from BetOnline. Again, it's everywhere you need to go for sports betting all in one place. It's a great just site that, again, looks good now too. It's not as new as it was. It's probably like a year ago now they updated everything. But if you've been a sports bettor, you know how bad some of these websites can look if you've been doing it for a while. They didn't always have all the high-tech stuff. BetOnline has it.
You got it. Well said. Sharp website. Best website. BetOnline, baby. Nice.
BetOnline, where the game starts, helping us get you the show here today. All right, Matt. So the Action Network comes out and reports that, according to one of their reporters, a source from the Big Ten tells them 7 potential schools are being considered to join the Big Ten in the next round or are being looked at by the Big Ten. A few of them we've already talked a lot about. Notre Dame is the only one that it isn't up to the Big Ten whether or not they get added to the Big Ten. That's not really they're considering being done. Then you've got Oregon and Washington, who have been 2 big names. Some new schools, though, rear their head, and it's names that have been thrown out there. But if this is coming from an official Big Ten source, then this is news here. You've got Stanford and Cal on the West Coast, but then you also have Florida State and Miami down in, well, where I am right now here on Miami Beach. It's two schools where, if you're asking me, that would be the Big Ten making kind of the same move you make with USC and UCLA in the West by trying to expand and go into that deep South area and get some teams in there. I don't know what it all means for like what's happening next, but I still have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that a Miami or a Florida State would be the next school to add to the Big Ten Conference. Maybe down the road, but I don't know. What are you thinking with these new names that are coming out?
Yeah, that is fascinating with Miami and FSU, because obviously you get the teams like USC and UCLA, and all right, that's Southern California. We got that market. Great job, everyone. Whew, way to go. I just don't know how beneficial it would be to tack on Stanford and Cal or Oregon and Washington if you're trying to go for, the next big market, because I could be wrong, but I think that it looks like Miami would be a bigger one, or, Florida State could be obviously a big one as well. And yeah, you got your out West teams. Let's keep carving out a nice area down south. And this is Kevin Warren's ultimate plan for world domination here, is that he's going to do it region by region, 2 teams at a time. So no, it sounds very strange, especially, and as you just said, you're in Miami, and I was fortunate enough to go to the Michigan State at Miami game last year. It was oppressively hot. I gotta say, it felt like anything but Big Ten country. It would just be one of those moves that just seemed very strange. What? Like, Northwestern's playing a November game and there's palm trees out in the distance. Like, what in tarnation's going on here? Like, hey, Hurricanes, here's your Thanksgiving week game. Come on up to Madison for a game. Well, how about you just freeze your what stuff? So it would be very weird optically, but that's just college football these days. USC, UCLA is going to look a little bizarre optically as well, but that's just how it works if you're a commissioner trying to make yourself the powerhouse conference, one market at a time. And yeah, that Florida market, that's a juicy one to get. So yeah, it sounds strange, but money talks, man. I think that's a good money maker for the Big Ten to get Miami and Florida State. I wouldn't be opposed to it. It sounds wacky. It sounds fun.
I think it's a pretty direct representative of where the two sides are at when we've talked about what the Big Ten could be doing next. Is it that you just follow the money wherever it's biggest and follow where you think the biggest opportunity to expand is? Because you've got the Florida State and Miami case there. Or are you trying to play things a little more safe? Are you trying to add schools who are still in the AAU? And when you get Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, all 4 of those schools are on that list. Both Miami and Florida State are not on that list. So that's, I think, really the two sides kind of butting heads the most right there. What happens next here? Does the Big Ten stick with kind of what it wants to be academically, what it could be as far as regionally, if it adds in some more of those teams on the West Coast? Or is this more of what you said with Kevin Warren, a pursuit of total domination here, of trying to eat up everything at once? I'm leaning more towards it's all about the money. And I understand that we've seen this happen so many times already, where the Big Ten's tried to expand and it becomes more about things more than the money. That AAU stuff matters, but it seems like, again, right now, I keep coming back to the point that this is a lot different than any other time.
No, I'm right with you. I'm almost in lockstep with you, because money talks. In the end, money talks. And yeah, we hear all about AAU, and that's all fun. And maybe it's 2 things. Maybe number 1, I'm too cynical and I just think that money rules everything. Or number 2, I'm not in that world of academia enough, or was never smart enough to be that heavily involved in it to really have an appreciation for AAU and what it truly means. But to me, a big money sign dominates anything that AAU is. I mean, Nebraska just lost their accreditation not too long ago. I think a few years ago.
Right.
Okay, if it meant that much, then would they get kicked to the curb immediately? It's not like we don't have schools in the Big Ten that don't have that accreditation anymore. So yeah, I'm sure it's fun. I'm sure some professors and some heads of departments won't be absolutely thrilled to have Miami, but do you know who will be thrilled? The rest of the Big Ten, everyone else that's counting the money. So yeah, money dominates everything. And I think this would be example number 72,369. That money just rules everything. Should Miami, Florida State, or any other non-AAU school be brought into this wonderful, wonderful conference, Nate?
If it does go that route, that would be the first time the Big Ten has really, I think, tried to compete with the SEC with teams.
Yeah.
Like SEC gets Oklahoma, Texas, fine. Big Ten gets USC, UCLA. I mean, I guess the SEC could have stepped in and tried and gotten them too. But now that this is starting, now that we've kind of officially said, okay, this is going to happen, I feel like this could be the breeding ground, like either this area or maybe like the North Carolina had been talked about too.
Yep.
I feel like one of those schools is going to have to eventually be that first school where two conferences are really competing for it. And that's where I think it is the next step, I guess, of evolution in what this realignment is. Teams are going to go to conferences. Maybe Washington and Oregon are going to end up Big Ten schools at some point, no matter what. But I feel like we'll find out if Kevin Warren decides to go after these Florida schools first. That means that he's really, really ready to go here. Really, really ready to take on the SEC, at least I think.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like what also just like it sits in the back of my head at all times is just how secretive the whole Texas and Oklahoma thing was for the longest time. But even more so, like I feel like even USC and UCLA jumping to the Big Ten was even kept more under wraps than Texas, Oklahoma. And like things could be going on right now. I don't know. So that just always trips me out right there. That like contracts could be very well being written up right now. But yeah, in the meantime, it's a wait and see game. I know we talked last week that, okay, well, everything's on pause for a little bit. And then, wha-bam, here we are. Action Network coming out with an article that says, not so fast. Here are 7 names for schools that could be joining the Big Ten in the next cycle, whether that be also 2024, like USC, UCLA, whether it's 2028, or whether it's 3012. Who's to say? But, man, it's an ever-going conversation. And it's fun. I got to say, I go up and down whether this is fun or not. But now that we're throwing the Florida schools in here, no, I'm back to this being very fun. So let's go. Let's ride. Embrace the chaos, Nate. Woo!
Do you think anything could actually happen in the season? Because I expected once we got to football, media days, stuff happening on the field, I thought the offseason was the time to do this. But it seems like, at least right now, the news cycle, as you said, I mean, it's not stopping.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, right, for this to be announced in the middle of a season, but I would think I'd be very foolish to just chalk it up as an absolute no. Crazy things happen all the time, and hey, if the moment strikes for some schools to start making money and join the Big Ten, be my guest. Wow, that would be. I'm excited just thinking about that. Actually, just week 6, Thursday of game day, and all of a sudden it breaks that the Canes and the Knowles are coming to the Big Ten. Woo! How about that for a nice little team distraction right there? That's oh my goodness gracious. Now we got the blood pumping about this.
I will say there's a big difference between it happening in the season and the deal being made in the season. The difference between it happening and us knowing about it is a whole lot. It could be done for 6 months and they'll just sit on it until the off season just to make things cleaner. But anyway.
True.
Matt Sheehan's with Locked On Spartans starting up next week. It'll be back to every single day of the week as we're back in football season, Monday through Friday. Matt, you're always doing great stuff over there. What's going on this week with Locked On Spartans?
Oh man, well,
next week,
basketball. You're fine.
Whatever. Promote things.
Just
go.
Some week. Hey, we're going to talk about Michigan State football and basketball. But no, we're going to get into all like the fall camp storylines, of course. We're going to be breaking down the quarterback position. And, sure, Peyton Thorne's going to be our quarterback, but it's fun who we're having on former quarterback Brian Lewerke to break down what he likes, doesn't like about Peyton Thorne's game, and just honestly, what us as lay people don't understand about playing the quarterback position in college. So that'll be a really fun conversation with a former Michigan State great quarterback coming up next week. So that's what we got, Nate.
That'd be really cool. We'll have you back on here to talk about whatever goes on in the Big Ten. Until then, Matt Sheehan, as always, with Locked On Spartans, at Sheehan_sports on Twitter. It's at On Spartans for the actual podcast feed. And then anything else?
LockedOnSpartans@gmail.com if you ever want to just email me and yell at me about any takes I have. So that's, scream at me. That's right.
Do it the old-fashioned way. Emails the old-fashioned way now.
Yeah, all caps, bang it out. Yeah, let's go. Here we go.
All right, Matt, thanks as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
You got it.
I'll be back in to wrap things up here in just a second. Welcome back in, and thanks, of course, for listening here to Locked On Big Ten. Thanks, as always, to Matt Sheehan for joining us on the program, as always. We'll be back next week, but first, some news from around the conference. Only real headlines from today. We have a report from Stanford saying that there has been, quote, no formal overture, end quote, with the Big Ten. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they're trying to say, but I is a phone call count as that? I don't know what a formal overture is, but I guess they're trying to say that they at least haven't talked to the Big Ten in any sort of really advanced way yet. In other news, recruiting news, a couple of big commitments for Maryland over this week. Dylan Fontes, a 3-star edge, is headed to the Terrapins, as is Tavon Nelson, a 3-star corner. Also, Rutgers picks up a commitment from Famatore, a 3-star wide receiver. Let's look at all the news around Big Ten here today. We'll be back, of course, on Monday in August for the start of what will be a long preseason football coverage here in the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Jay Stevens will be back in to talk about anything that happens over the weekend in the conference. Until then, again, I'm Nate Dickinson. Thanks for listening.